Okay. Live. All right, so we're live, and welcome to user feedback team meeting. We have a new potential member this week, and Giuseppe is joining and interested in getting more involved. I've got a list of short list of like 5-6 things for you to get involved in. High level, user feedback is exists to create a bi-directional channel to end users. It's bi-directional in the sense that our job is not done just by sort of bringing an issue to the TSC or building awareness, but part of that is also continuing to serve whomever may be looking to get feedback. So we don't leave folks hanging. Everyone here in the Node.js projects that are volunteers. When we're providing connective tissue, we're looking to build and support that all the way through the life cycle of feedback. In order to sort of focus our time and engage with various audiences, we've broken things down into focus areas, so we can build those communities together. Currently, those focus areas are the general user, the enterprise use case, and Ahmed has taken the lead on the enterprise user feedback. We have a group that is that formed around tooling. And I haven't had an opportunity to follow up with Christopher Hiller to see if tooling has graduated. The tooling group that just formed inside of the Node.js project, came to us first, and we helped them bootstrap. Chris took over the organizing of that tooling group, and we were able to help them land some changes into FS. They'd been including node modules in every project, and we're like, why isn't this just a core API? Brought that to the TSC, and now that group has under github.com/node.js/tooling formed a new group. I'm actually not sure yet what the relationship is going to be with that tooling group and the user feedback team. We'll always be here in terms of facilitating and helping build bridges and connect with the broader user community. That's still an open thing.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I could see it being one of two. Like, it could be that, they just want to be a group that operates and covers the outreach and the internal sort of technical work in core. Or they might still see it as like that team is focused on the technical work and the outreach is kind of a separate issue. So,
right.
Either way, it's great to see that. And, I guess I just wanted to add to the original description is, our goal is to form the sort of long-standing relationships with end users so that we can, repeatedly get feedback and sort of test ideas, as well as, on a regular basis, hear what those groups' concerns are in terms of things that we should be thinking about in the project.
Makes sense.
So this past week we had the evolution of general user feedback. We've found that focused topics perform much better than come have a discussion. The come have a discussion just doesn't have enough draw or enough focused energy, and we found the general use case kind of drifting from engagement. So this past week, I posited, hey, we could go and run an online meetup and offer folks something, basically, give you some content, and then as we're gathered together, have a greater group of individuals that are participating and engaging, and therefore drive that interaction. So ran a pilot. Thank you, Michael Dawson and Rich Trott, for graciously presenting. It was fantastic presentations up and down. We had a moderate-sized group, about 10 folks, very active throughout. A mix of folks from regulars, a few folks that found the meetup through meetup.com, which was pretty cool. So coming from broader affinity groups and using the meetup is quite good at a couple things, sort of broadcasting to folks in an audience interest area, and creating recurring attendance. So that is something that meetup.com as a tool is very good at.
Yeah, I think I'd add while there was like 40 registrations and maybe 20 people that joined, we also got 140 people who've joined the group. So I think that's a really good sign, just in terms of that's now a larger community that we can message. And Zibby did reach out to me, and I assume she's going to reach out to you, Dan, in terms of doing more promotion even through our regular channels. But even without that, it's great to see that we got like 140 people. Hopefully that's like 140 who we wouldn't have gotten through our regular channels. So I don't know if there's other ways to promote your meetups and stuff that, because that seems to be one of the reasons we went this way, was to try and get out of our own bubble, right? And so I don't know if there's like more standard meetup ways to promote things, but we should see if we can take advantage of those too.
Well, I mean, there's also just the basics of promoting a thing, right? And in terms of this past iteration, we got the minimum slice of a little bit of D-Shaw's network traffic, and what's on meetup.com, and that's about it. So when we come back for the next one, I was going to reach out to Zibby anyway to ask her to help. So that's something, there just needs to be the physics of time and have a schedule laid out. And with that you can drive promotion. It is the promotional part is a whole task in and of itself.
Yeah.
And that is definitely something that, as we take on this new sort of responsibility, that I am not out of my league, but out of my capacity to really continue to drive, because the setup organization of the meetup, and then running the meetup, it's probably 20 hours of fiddling and work just to get that up. And realistically, if you're going to do a good job of promoting and getting the word out, we're going to need to do blog posts, we're going to need to schedule tweets and social media posts. So there's a fair amount of work, and I'd love to just find a willing and able volunteer that is willing to take that on.
I'm sure Zibby will help with some parts of that. The only thing is, like, we tried tweets and all that before, and I think we figured we needed to go to sort of the non-core Node channels to get this group of people. So it's like, what other, like you, I don't know what those other channels are, but it's like,
so
if anybody who does know those, that would be great if they could help out.
Right. I mean, some of the things that we want to do. Well, first, get out of Twitter. Right. Well, one, get on Node.js Twitter. Right. There's you and I and all of our social tweets. But the Node.js Twitter is super meaningful and has a huge following. So. Making sure that we're scheduling tweets with Zibby on the Node.js Twitter account will get us a lot more visibility than what we saw ourselves.
We did do that in our earlier attempts, though. So, like, we definitely had her retweet the issue where we said, "Hey, we're having these meetings" and all that kind of stuff. So. I agree we want to do that, just not 100% sure it's going to reach the different audience that.
So retweet and a tweet from Node.js different. So we should have in order to do that, we need to build some copy. There's actual marketing work that needs to get done. Build some copy. Probably a few variations. Actually putting together images for the folks that are presenting really changes the amount of
right. Okay.
And then to really get that farther audience, I would say we want to go for a Medium post and hopefully something with enough draw to get on Node.js Weekly.
Right. Okay.
Right. So, in sort of building out this next pass of promotion, first and foremost, we need to give ourselves enough time to promote. Right.
Yep.
So, I don't think we should come back in October. We're going to be all at Node+JS Interactive anyway during the second Wednesday. Is right there in the middle of Node.js Interactive, and we can give ourselves more time to organize and more time to promote by just let's schedule for November at the earliest.
Okay.
So, anyone else did? Anyone else make the meetup? Any other thoughts? Ahmed, have you run many online meetups? Mostly in person. I can't hear you if you're talking.
I heard him.
Huh.
I didn't hear him.
Oh, that's weird.
That is.
Ahmed, I heard you say mostly in person, so.
Hear me now?
A little bit.
A little bit, like really, really far away.
Maybe it's a microphone problem. How about now?
Yeah. Same as last time you asked.
This is the problem with online meetups, things go wrong.
I don't want to disrupt the conversation.
Cool. So yeah, the online meetup is interesting format. Any meetup or event, your topics and speakers are a big part of your draw. we have the Node.js brand that is going to help a lot. But in terms of drawing folks in and directing topics of conversation, the selection process that we have is it's definitely going to affect the the attendance. One thing that I think could be interesting. I haven't had an opportunity to engage. I don't know if anyone else has, but the Node.js Foundation did just kick off a speakers bureau. Has anyone interacted with that yet? Or volunteered?
Yes, I've volunteered for it.
Okay.
So far, go ahead.
You know how well that's doing, and like we already had you as a speaker, so
yeah,
we found you.
Yeah, in terms of the number of volunteers and stuff like that,
right. Is that
I haven't actually paid attention to see who all else has volunteered.
Okay.
I think most of them would be familiar faces, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
also
they would be.
volunteered for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember that Miles has as well.
Hello?
Hello.
What are you saying?
Yeah, most of the speaker break. Yeah, the members of the speaker breaks are all members and familiar faces that we are aware of. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hello.
All right. Basically, I actually got to. Okay, I'm going to be speaking in one of the conferences in Germany. I think everybody there are familiar faces that we all know. Yeah, I've gone through the list over and over again. They're all familiar faces that we know.
So here are the people. I'm pasting the link to it. So these are the people who are volunteered.
Great. Okay.
So, I think that's a group of people. What I'm still, my biggest interest is to figure out how, as opposed to doing presentations, how we can get people telling, feeding us information. Versus it's great to get information out, but I think our biggest challenge is how do we get information in? Because that's sort of, I think that's for the user feedback team, that was the difference between, the marketing or the evangelizing or whatever. It's like, I really want to hear from the end users what they think is important, what they're struggling with, what feedback that they would want the project to hear, right?
Yeah, in any social endeavor, there's a solid 80-20 rule where most folks are not contributing and creating. So there's just physics. So if we want that pool of individuals that are going to give that feedback, we need a larger pool.
Right. Right. Exactly. And what I have in mind is not necessarily so presentations may be the way to do some of that, but it wouldn't necessarily be from the community, from our core project to the community. We'd want to engage the community in coming and presenting on a topic that's important to them, that other people, but plus the project members can learn about, if you know what I mean.
Yep. I agree with you in the long term. I think in order to get there,
sure,
we're going to have to model, and we'll have to
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not. Yeah. I think we're on the same wavelength. I just wanted
to share some of the TELUS stuff and
exactly right. I just
example stuff that we're building that we want to see.
Yeah, I just was raising because it's easy to sort of fall into the, hey, here are the easy ones we can get. Just want us to keep front of mind that we want to get to that point where we can find some people out in the community there and say, hey, what would you find what's the topic that think we should be talking about?
Right. Yes. So in setting up the SF Node meetup model, I laid that out as having one advanced topic and one beginner topic to make sure that we remain beginner friendly, and as well as retaining participation of more sophisticated end users, and that model has worked well for many years. We could consider something similar where we are maybe having someone from core or someone sort of well known in node spaces, plus a community presentation to balance that.
Yep.
But I don't think we can get away with, especially in the beginning, not having names. Like, it's so important to drawing,
sure.
attendance in an event.
Yep.
Better for worse.
Yeah, like we could, if we did one like that, and then, even in the steady state, if we had, one which was a project to community, and then one which was community to project, that still might be a fine balance. But and I agree, bootstrapping, could be a little different, but just always something to keep forward of mind is.
So, I'd like to talk through some of the components of what we did, what worked, what didn't. So the meetup is structured as a 2-hour event, and leveraging some of that meetup style socialization, and using that to potentially draw out user feedback discussions. I thought the initial opening round of discussion was quite interesting. So rather than just completely opening the floor and getting silence, we we went around and had everyone introduce themselves. So I think we had 10 to 14 folks live at any one time. So that very much that was solid 20 minutes of about as fast as I could get through that. So as we ratchet up, I don't know that process will scale, but that was a nice icebreaker.
Yeah, I agree. And if we do, so for example, if we had 100 people, we'd have difficulty going through all 100. But I would still say that you could pick like a random, and we could say that up front, at the beginning at random, we're going to ask 10 to 20 people to do that, right? So we continue to get a flavor of the people who are attending and what they're interested in and why they're there.
Great. Yeah, that's going to take team coordination.
In terms of
going out and doing the outreach, because as you're setting up, as I'm talking and sort of running the show, going and reaching out to folks and in chat. I don't know that we're gonna be able to do that. So real time spoken, that's gonna be challenging. We're gonna have to go and reach out to folks and ping them on chat.
Really, like it just seems to me we have a list of 100. We could say, well, we're gonna do every fifth one in the list, assuming it's not alphabetically ordered or something. Just every fifth one. Somebody, you could do the intro. You could assign somebody else who just looks at the list. First one, hey, Michael, hey, can you give us a quick outline of what you're doing? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, they're done. Next one, next, 5 down, next, go.
Yeah, Zoom isn't very static. I don't know what list you're thinking of, right. But as you're that going around the horn, having everyone introduce themselves. I almost never use the Zoom participants list for that.
Right.
One of the other working groups that I chair, I use attendance. Everyone signs in on attendance, and that is a static list that is usually added to at the end, and that is usually what I use to get
right. In this case, though, it doesn't matter if it's a little off, right? Like, we're not trying to get everybody if that's the case. So I'm just trying to see how we can keep things simple, right?
Right.
Like, or when you did the registration, do you get the list of currently registered people somewhere?
So we'll have that on Meetup. The delta here is
No, I didn't mean that. I meant
finding,
when people, I think you asked when people signed in to
oh gosh, yeah.
to the web, to the webinar, they had to register, right? Is that list anywhere?
I'm sure it is. Going and getting that out of Zoom, it's not, as far as I know, in the.
So in that case, I would still just advocate for the start at the first one, go to the 5th person, the 10th person. We're really just trying to get a random subset, right? And if something changes along the way, and you drop somebody who you might have asked to introduce themselves, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm.
And maybe we should wait till we have the problem of having too many
Sure.
people, right? I'm just thinking, like, we can do something simple like that if it is a huge number of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It did, like, I'm just agreeing because I agreed with you that like, I don't know, it's going to be very difficult to just have an open conversation, right?
Right.
But a little bit of the, hey, getting the people to say who they are and why they're interested was quite interesting, and I think would continue to be, even if it's the subset of the people.
Right. And I was really happy that we had Michelle from Microsoft, there to listen for user feedback on, Windows system issues.
Yep.
That was, perfect. Like that is exactly the kind of thing that I'd like to see more of. Folks, looking for feedback and coming and engaging with folks, and it'd be nice to have Michelle come and present next time. Actually, that would really sort of get that ball rolling. Let the community here around user feedback know who some of the folks that beyond core are really looking for feedback, and can not only connect to the issues that relate to core, but how that goes into their end usage. Great. But so that was the the intro. So the intro, about a half an hour of discussion, and I never really got too antsy in terms of are we going to fill time? Ran through 30 minutes, and it was time to get the presentation started, and it felt really natural. Then we had our two talks. Michael Dawson shared an overview of the project, and Rich Trott shared some feedback and responses to Ryan Dahl's presentation at JSConf EU about the regrets around Node. Both really good presentations. I had a full hour on that, and we basically took up that whole hour with two talks. I don't think we can get any more than those two talks in the time that we have there.
Sorry if I missed this, but are those talks recorded? Because I'd be really curious about them both.
Yeah, absolutely. They are, the Node.js, like we do in every setup, it's broadcast to YouTube. Cool. So, it's in my Twitter backlog, and I just go there and look for Node.js Online Meetup.
Cool.
Yeah, no real concerns or feedback there. My biggest takeaway is, I'd slot it in, 2, maybe 3, and I would say that 2 is about all that's going to fit into an hour. Mihai or Michael, do you have any other thoughts or feedback on presentations and how we can leverage those presentations to get more user feedback engagement?
Just my earlier one that try to make sure that some of them are on the broader community and the end users presenting on issues that they're facing or things that they're doing, as opposed to just the project, what's going on in the project itself. Right. Yeah, but that's my main. That's the main thing.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm still aware with the 2 hours thing. I think, in my opinion, I think 2 hours is kind of too long. Mm-hmm. I don't think so many people from higher management are going to join that. Or we shouldn't expect people to stay for 2 hours, that's for sure. That is going to be expected, I think. So one thing is probably, or just put a note, guys, it's okay if you stay for 1 hour, but, before we need to have a clear agenda. So this is going to be the first presentation. This is going to be the next presentation. I think that at least it should be a minimum, because the people don't expect the higher management to stay for 2 hours.
Sure.
That's my opinion.
Right. No, I agree. But I also don't think that this is necessary. This is general user feedback, so I don't necessarily think that that's necessarily our target audience. That matches my experience in just meetups as well. Evening time, after work is very. I'm often the more senior person.
Yeah, and in person too, it's even kind of that way in the sense that there's some social time before, there's some social time after, but the presentation and the kind of content of the meetup, more than an hour starts to get a little long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And in structuring the meetup, that time before is really necessary in making sure that the presentation is a good experience, right? It's allowing folks to get in, get settled, usually compensating for physically arriving at a thing. We don't have that in the online space, we always have in these meetings, a good solid, 5-10 minutes before we, can really kick things off anyway. So we may be able to shave that down, but that's going to defeat our ability to say, hey, at this time, if you want to just come, swoop in for talks, come at this time. If we only buffer for folks arriving.
Makes sense.
Then the part that I was least happy about was the final half an hour after we were done. That is a bit more of an open discussion forum. I thought I'd squeeze about as much discussion as I could in the first discussion block. We had a few things to go through, but we wrapped up, I think, about 15 minutes early. Something like that, 10, 15 minutes early.
Yeah, like 10 minutes, yeah.
Right on. So, that's the space where, I thought we might get into a deeper user feedback discussion, right? We could, layer in specific questions, maybe drop some survey-like questions at that point. I don't know if we should lean heavily on that side of things, or try to include that those sorts of things at the beginning while folks are getting settled.
I think it might have worked if the topics were one where it was something where you could then have a discussion on the topic afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I don't, the getting involved, you might have like discussion about, hey, I'm interested, dive more into a particular area, but it wasn't like a topic where somebody could say, oh yeah, that I have that same problem. Let's sort of dive into the, the challenge that was outlined there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if it's,
I agree. I think
that, somebody, sorry, go ahead, Ahmed.
I was saying, I agree with you. I think that tying in, and by the way, I dialed in on the phone, so my audio works.
Yep.
I was saying the tying in the topic is key, but going back to Dan's point, like requires a higher level of coordination and planning and doing those things. And then you can do the survey up front at the opening, and then keep referring to it as the topic continues and as the talk continues to re-emphasize the point of having people contribute to it.
Mm. So seeding the discussion topics at the beginning, I like that a lot. Wow.
Right, like you could, for example, if you think about promises in a survey, you could basically say, here's some questions we want to try and answer. You could then have a presentation on the promises, and then that would lead quite a bit to, basically having a good discussion on that afterwards.
Awesome. Yeah, and I was actually thinking about that promises survey as well. That could be a really fun meetup. Have perhaps Ben share a technical journey, and maybe technical sort of presentation coming from a foundation perspective, and maybe invite someone from the Netflix team to share some of the work that they've been doing around observability of promises.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Mm-hmm. And seed that with the survey topics. Just go through and ask some folks. Bonus points if we have the survey done and ready, like for folks to go fill out an entire form. Really cool.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk about that offline. I don't know if we want to spend time doing it right now, but you pinged me about that issue, and I'm happy to try and shepherd that along. I need to just get up to speed on what exactly that means.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah, we can take some of that offline, but just so we sort of have a public record of and set expectations with everybody of what that is. So the Benjamin, what's Benjamin's last name? Benjamin is Benjamin TR, right? Is our it has been advocating for greater promise adoption, and in order to sort of help facilitate that and help the TSC in their decision making process of how to promisify the APIs in Node, and how to prioritize that. Ben has created a fair amount of deeply technical questions. So he's really coming at it from an expert's perspective. So, deep understanding of the idiosyncrasies of promises. He's core maintainer of Bluebird. He knows all the edges. What needs to be done with that original work is, take that and probably make that a little bit more user friendly, a little bit more approachable. In terms of the questions, the folks at the foundation are happy to help us do that. They spend a lot of time making their surveys repeatable and statistically valid. And that really involves a fair amount of work in crafting questions. So either you can get a good yes or no answer, or it drops into multiple choice. That can be consistent over multiple surveys. Open-ended questions and lots of broad variation in topics are really not the best fit for surveys. So there's a bit of shaping and validation that needs to be done there, and then the generation and creation of the survey. We've chosen to have the Node.js Foundation host and run the survey because through that we can ensure user privacy, and we don't have to since the Node.js and the Linux Foundation contractors have a specific contract with the organization to maintain the privacy of that user data. We've chosen to hand that off to them, so we don't have to manage privacy and deal with personally identifiable data. So great, yeah. Thank you, Giuseppe. It sounds like that one thing may build to like 3 or 4 different things that are all tied around this November timeframe of a meetup. Very, very timely, and really excited to have you get involved in that.
Cool. Happy to help for sure.
So beyond that, let's go and look at issue 61. There's a TypeScript strong typing survey request that was requested back in May, but hasn't really generated that momentum as we saw with promises, and is going to need need the sort of the development of what are the questions that we need to ask, and push that a little bit further. There's not quite enough there to sort of take on the challenge or get critical mass, but we could definitely schedule something with those folks and continue that conversation.
My only worry with that topic is it's too broad. How do we narrow it down to something meaningful that can be actioned? And what I mean by that is, strong typing in a programming language as a general topic is it's not so much about TypeScript and Node.js, just strong typing. It seems to be the ask here, right? So it's a very broad topic. So I don't know what a good idea is to narrow it down so it can be actionable. But it sounds like it might also be a risk of a bit of a opinion wars.
Right.
If you open up that conversation saying, who wants TypeScript, who doesn't want TypeScript, and then it doesn't really drive a discussion that's meaningful.
But I drive it more in terms of the survey. I think it was trying to get a better feel for how much usage there is out there, and possibly if there's different things that you could imagine doing in Node that would support TypeScript or not, what level of support or demand there would be for those. For example, would it be useful? I mean, I know bindings are maintained separately, but should bindings be bundled in with Node? I don't know if that makes sense or whatever, but that's the kind of question where you could see asking people, and you'd have to come up with some, you'd want to pull out some subtleties do you see value in it being bundled in versus pulling it out from a separate module? But I think there'd be some things that once you had that data, it'd actually be quite interesting. But you are right. You'd have to be quite careful in terms of the questions. I wouldn't be saying, hey, do you are you for or against typing, right? It would be more like, would it add value to you if there was typing supported, or something. I mean, maybe that's not even good, but you'd have to word them so that you got a very specific answer that wouldn't be just a flame war kind of thing, but that would give you data to back up whether we should do something or just do nothing, right?
Yeah, if I'm to repeat what you just said, what I heard is like, let's ask questions that relate to actual use cases that could then be solved by strong typing, as opposed to ask about strong typing.
That's a perfectly good, yeah, right. Like you could step it back to the problems and ask about those problems, and then, the goal being to get some data to say, is this something that potentially the project should think about, do some work on? And if so, what would be people's priorities on that front? But you're right, in many cases, it would be better to ask about the problems that it aims to solve, and then, use that data to infer whether TypeScript is an answer or not, or whatever. But yeah, good point.
Got it. So I was going to reference the 46% of npm users are using TypeScript. When I first which is a number that Laurie has been sharing recently. I originally interpreted that as 46% of packages in npm are using TypeScript, and that is absolutely not what that number is.
That I would have said, like, what?
Yeah. So that is a survey of end user behavior and folks using TypeScript. And that number being that high makes sense to me. I see a lot of uses of TypeScript, and a lot of folks are using TypeScript at some point in their development journey right now. So that makes. Okay, so we'll come back to that. Last but not least, Ahmed, it's probably time to consider rallying the troops and doing the next iteration of the enterprise use case. Any thoughts, plans? Want some help getting that set up?
Yeah. So we left this conversation a while ago about what the context of Node and JS Interactive coming around the calendar. So that's very close, but not too close. So in October, there are activities happening around there. So I wanted to solicit some ideas if or not we should tie those things together or keep them separate.
Like try and do something at Node.js Interactive, or
possibly doing something at, or in alignment with or around the same time.
Right.
I don't know. Just thinking out loud, if we have a big collective of Node.js users in the enterprise space coming to a big conference, is there a reason to actually invest more energy in trying to do something perhaps in person or at the event or adjacent to the event, to be more accurate? Mm-hmm. Or should we just keep what we're doing and continue the same pattern here, what we're doing with the same user feedback and online approach?
No, I like that a lot. That's I think a great way to build the conversations and feed what types of conversation folks want, right? It's not a lot of folks are used to this mode that we have in Node.js of like putting yourself out there and being on video and committing to a thing. That can be hard, and so having that in-person discussion and just getting folks chatting makes a ton of sense. And then potentially coming back and scheduling in in the following weeks, probably not too far off that, maybe at the end of October, having end of October, beginning of November, depending on how those dates line up. Don't want to, you're going to gather momentum and, connect folks. And then you're going to want to give them a date fix a date in the future and give them a date to follow up, and that'll build a lot of momentum. Excellent.
Yeah, and actually one more point that you kind of alluded to that I've actually heard from a couple of folks that I tried to invite who were like, I'm not sure if I can be online on a video stream representing my organization. So that was interesting.
Right.
I mean, I think that's fair enough. And like our whole goal is to be public and transparent, but I don't think we should also, on the other hand, I don't think we should let that shut us off from feedback from certain cases. So, while I think we want to, we don't want most of our stuff to be private, I wouldn't be opposed to having some subset of the calls, more private if that helps us hear from more people, right?
Right. Yeah. And
I think it was just a case of, we opened it up and we're trying to get it going and invite people, and they haven't seen it or gotten to understand the value out of it. So a little bit hesitant to be participants. I don't think we should facilitate by doing things privately. That's just, probably defeats the purpose. But using an opportunity like the conference that's happening, people who are physically there, we can have that opportunity of doing something of a physical kind of get together and show them that there's value so that they can continue contributing.
Yep. Great. Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
And to Michael Dawson's point, if you feel like folks do end up reaching for a private session, the pattern that we usually have is an open forum, and then we'll go and carve out some of the time at the end of the meeting for a private session. So you could schedule it that way too, and just turn off the live feed and let them share a little bit more openly without any recordings.
But
yeah,
I think
I can't call it a pattern yet, but it happened already in the Node Summit conference where there was a panel talking about enterprise stuff. I used that as an opportunity to ping people and say, we want to do something in the user feedback committee. Oh, look what we did in the physical conference. So that kind of drove a conversation and drove some contribution. So there was a connection to that, right? So physical connection is something people can attribute. So I don't know if it's a pattern. It's only happened once, but maybe we can try that again as part of JS Interactive.
Nice.
Well, I think in terms of team building, it's absolutely like get people together physically at least once,
right.
Even if it's just over coffee, lunch, whatever, build the relationships. And then I can only think that that's going to help then in the future meetings. So
totally agree.
So in terms of action items, do we, the user feedback committee, have anything scheduled in adjacent to October 10, October 11th as part of the JS Interactive things?
I don't think we don't have anything scheduled. There are, in terms of getting people like myself or Dan, there are some TSC and CommCom type meetings, I think, or dinners. But
so the second ask was, if I try to come up with a physical meeting time and suggest some times, do you think that's a good next steps for the next meeting of the enterprise conversation?
Yeah, so I have a room and a presentation scheduled. I'll get you the time for public user feedback session. Maybe what we can do is piggyback on that and say, hey, come to this, and then afterwards we'll stay and we'll go and have a round of shots together or something.
I like that even better. Yes.
Okay.
And Tellus can sponsor the coffee.
Great.
Yeah. The tea and coffee, right?
Tea and coffee. Yeah, that's what I meant. Tea and coffee. It's 9 a.m. It's I don't know what the time is. Great. So Ahmed, I'll follow up with you on that. And Giuseppe had to drop, but I'll work with Giuseppe to get the promises survey moved on to the next step. And Michael, would you be willing or interested in taking on the follow up with Chris to see what his expectations are and how
Yep, no problem. Just add that as an action to me in the minutes, and I'll do that.
Awesome, thank you. All right, well, thanks everybody. There was a lively discussion. Adam Miller, suggest promoted tweets. Great to see everyone in the YouTube chat, and see everyone in a couple weeks.
Great, thanks. See you
Thanks.
later.
Bye.
Bye.